It's Jonathan Albin, and this is NYCOS RPG. We are going to be talking tonight about the reasons to nix your clumsy old system. Now, I don't have a care for which system you play. In my estimation, if you haven't played the NYCOS RPG, you haven't gotten the chance to really play a real role-playing game. I'm kidding. It's a joke. In reality, role-playing games are the element of play where the system really is not as essential as is the environment and the interaction. So, having said that, I want to talk in particular about what my system tells me that it's time to start because my alarm's going off. Yay! So, we are talking about, in particular, getting rid of the horrendous combat slogs that most game systems have, and the flat, boring experience that the combat and conflict aspects of roleplay can have. And the reason why this is so important is that when you go and watch a movie, if they are using circa 1950s roundhouse punch, fake blows, and the theatrics of, say, vaudeville to demonstrate how fighting works, you lose your sense of reality, especially if you've seen more of the recent films where they can use CGI and speeded up activity and all of that to make the fight scenes more frenetic. And now that we've gotten used to that kind of a mechanic, it's really difficult to play a video game, or even, play a tabletop game and not feel the Punch and Judy of it all, the idea of whacking at each other until the pool of life points goes away. And in addition to that, if we don't have a particularly dynamic storyteller and the players aren't particularly good at visualizing and expressing what's going on, it even sounds boring. I hit, I do this damage. I hit, I do this damage. You miss, you got this number. It just feels flat and uninteresting. And so we're going to talk about reasons that you should nix your old system in favor of something more dynamic. First of all, you need to have, or you want to have, exciting cinematic engagements. When you engage the big bad, especially in a fight scene that ends a session or is particularly salient to a story point, you want the bodies to be flying across the room. You want to feel the impact of the person charging into you with his shoulder. And the mechanics of a role-playing game, such as the ones that are available today, aren't really getting this done. They are using a numbers system mechanically that dates back to the 1960s, just like the old roundhouse punches and whatever that just make the game feel aged. So we need a system that actually allows you to change up the way things go, have condition changes going on instantaneously and constantly throughout the game based on what players do. We need to have a swift, visual and intuitive battle process, which means if we know that we have a flat range of numbers that will give us a 2-hit roll, we need to be able to expand that to have partial attacks and sideways slides and parallel combat, and people get into a bind and lock each other down and stop the swinging. We need to have all of these things that give us a visual and intuitive battle sequence that makes it feel like we're actually in the fight of our lives. We want smooth and steady, speedy gameplay. We want there to be roll a dice, do a comparison, see what the relative positioning is, and decide at that instant what's resolved and then move on. We just want to have it constantly in motion and have the mechanism be so fluid and easy to do the comparisons that you don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about how many hit points you have left and whether or not you have enough resilience to keep going. We also need to have some kind of player to game synergy. And that is when a player does something in game, it needs to feel like there was an interaction with the game. There needs to be some means that the player can feel like he had agency and the things that he did in the fight mattered, that the numbers feel like they mean something. And the idea of knowing that every time you toss a blow at somebody, you have a chance to catch even a partial is intellectually logical and also stimulating to the way we think to watch how the situation flows. And with the player putting input in as well as far as the conditional changes, it's creating an activity and an excitement that we don't find in other game mechanics. We also want broader, more variable outcomes. If it's just a simple threshold, say 15, and we're going to hit, we have calculated time and again that we're going to need a 7 or an 8 on the dice. And it's just, did I make it? Did I fail? Did I make it? Did I fail? Did I make it? Did I fail? Yeah. It's just not, there's no excitement. There's no possibility of anything changing. Whereas if there is a constant flow of conditional alteration, then we may eventually build to an advantage. We may be able to put a person at such a disadvantage that we can actually end the battle prematurely and stop the bloodshed, so to speak. The next thing we need to look at is to look at how rapid and rational are the reactions. So when a player does a thing in the game, how does the monster respond? And is that rational? Is it smooth? Is it rapid so that there's no vacillating or worrying or dragging out what's going on? We simply are able to get on to the next point in the conflict. And if you're doing it with a system that has a chronological trigger, then you know when things happen in the order in which they occur. And the relativistic positioning within the round also helps with that. Finally, we need seamless in-game advancement. If I am slowly getting better with a weapon, I should be able to see that exchange improve moment by moment. And in an in-game advancement mechanism, literally means as you accomplish or as you trigger the advancement, it's provided. You don't have to wait around for it. Now, there are cases where there's an opportunity to gain inspiration off of your action, and so the action will trigger that inspiration at that moment. But it doesn't necessarily manifest in that moment, but it does manifest as we reflect on what we actually accomplished in that scene. And then we need consistent conflict conclusions. In other words, when is the fight over? In a role-playing game as they are today, as flat and boring as they are, we still don't necessarily know when the conclusion occurs because we have determined there to be a pool of points that must be whittled down. And the damage that one does to reduce that number is usually incrementally relatively small, and so therefore you just have to chip away, and it doesn't feel like a real conflict because people don't fight that way. That's just not how the world works. It does in a role-playing game because that's all we've ever had, but now there's an opportunity to have a system that gives you a clear and consistent knowledge of what a win is going to look like and what a lose is going to look like and what that actually means in terms of conflict. And we want to get, therefore, more game per session. In other words, if we are going to have a combat conflict in a scene, is it going to take all night? In traditional RPGs, when you get your character up for the big fight at the end of a conflict, and it's going to be a run and gun, it might take hours to finish each of the conflict sections. And so therefore, you're going to lose out on a lot of time that could have been used to do more exciting things, seen more happen, expand more alternatives. And so therefore, in order to get more game per session, we need to have a conflict system that is rapid, gets right to the point, and that's the flow of action, follow the action. And so in reality, what we're talking about is the NYCOS RPG mechanism gives you the opportunity to get more game out of every session. That means more fun out of every game. And that just means that you're going to be getting more than you expect with NYCOS RPG. Now, the reality of the statement below is absolutely true. Real life is for those who can't handle our NYCOS RPG, because the NYCOS RPG is going to elevate your look, your vision, elevate your thinking, elevate your game. I want to thank you for taking time to watch this video, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm Jonathan Albin, the Games Master, and I will see you next time.